across to people across this entire nation to use the brain that God gave you to think for yourself. Don't let somebody else tell you what you're supposed to think. Don't let some pundit tell you what you're supposed to think. Certainly don't let the political establishment tell you what you're supposed to think. Those are the people who got us in the situation that we're in now. And they will continue to drive that train right off the cliff if we let them. We have to be smart enough to stop. Well, at any rate, you know, my mother had a legitimate reason for getting divorced. She discovered that my father was a bigamist. And, you know, she was one of 24 children, got married when she was 13, shuffled from family to family, really never had a stable home life. Got little bits of education here and there, ended up with about the equivalent of a third grade education. And if anybody had a right to feel like they were a victim, it was her. But she absolutely refused to be a victim. And she would do everything that she possibly could to try to give us a reasonable life. She worked 2 to 3 jobs at a time, getting up and leaving at 5 in the morning, getting back after midnight. And her friends were all saying, "Why are you doing that? You know, the welfare programs are there to take care of people like you, and you have a couple of kids. They can take care of you." But she didn't want to be dependent on anybody else. And she figured she would work as long and as hard as necessary, and she didn't want us to be dependent. And she had a lot of ingenuity. I mean, she knew how to stretch every dollar. She would take us out in the country on a Sunday morning and would knock on farmers' doors. And she would say, "Can we pick 4 bushels of your corn or your beans or your apples or your grapes? 3 for you and 1 for us." Well, they always liked that deal. And then she would bring the stuff home and she would can it and be able to stretch those dollars. She would go to the Goodwill and buy a pair of pants with a big hole in the knee. And this was before that was fashionable. And then she would get patches and put them on both sides. And people would be saying, "Wow, this is fabulous. Where did you get those? I want a pair like that." Drive a car until it would not make a sound. And then she would go collect all her quarters and nickels and dimes and buy a new car. And people would be saying, "How can that woman afford a new car?" She could do it because she was thrifty. Every penny counted. And I think if my mother was the Secretary of Treasury, we would not be in a deficit situation.